Have you ever had one of those moments when you feel like you look around at your life and you think, how did I get here? Not in a bad way, just kind of confusion. Like you're sitting in a meeting or you're leading something important or somebody introduces you with a title that sounds really impressive. And you think to yourself, do they know who they're talking about? Because I'm pretty sure I just snuck in here. If you've ever felt like that, then this episode's for you. Welcome to Faith in the Friction, a podcast about finding strength, resilience, and hope in difficult places. I'm Sean, and this is a space for honest stories, thoughtful reflection, and encouragement for people navigating the tensions of work and life and faith. And today, I want to let you know what this podcast is all about and why it exists. To do that, I need to tell you my story. My story doesn't begin in a place that looked like promise. It begins with survival. I grew up with a single mom. By the time she was 22 years old, she had 4 kids and our dad was gone. My mom worked incredibly hard, but we lived in constant instability. We grew up very poor. And I don't mean things were tight kind of poor. I mean the kind of poor where stress lives in the house with you, where uncertainty is normal. When you live like that, you learn from an early age not to ask for things because there's no point. I can remember as a kid walking through the house, searching everywhere for loose change, checking couch cushions and under furniture and in drawers just to find enough change, coins, to buy a loaf of bread to make some sandwiches. That was normal life. Normal life was moving from one place to another, a few times having to split our family up because we had no home. Normal was government assistant cheese and powdered milk. And if you've ever had powdered milk, you know what I'm talking about. Normal was going through a bag of clothes that somebody had gotten rid of and being thrilled to get a 10-year-old t-shirt. Normal was hard. My dad was in and out of prison most of my life. Sometimes he would appear and then he would just disappear. And every time it created confusion, tension, and instability. Home never felt steady, never predictable. So I learned to stay alert, always watching, always adjusting, trying to stay safe. School wasn't an escape either. It was another place I had to survive. I was bullied a lot as a kid. Part of that was because we didn't have much. I often wore the same clothes to work or to school every day. And kids notice that. And kids talk about that. And kids make sure that you know that they notice it. So I learned to stay small, to stay quiet, to avoid attention. Because attention usually meant pain. I actually failed 8th grade, not because I wasn't capable, not because I wasn't smart enough, not because I didn't understand the work, but because I was afraid to move on into high school with those same kids who were bullying me. So I stayed back. I failed on purpose. I didn't fail academically. I failed emotionally. Fear made that decision for me. There was also abuse in my childhood, verbal abuse and physical abuse. And when you grow up in environments like that, you don't just experience fear, you develop an internal posture of fear. You learn to read the room, to read tone, body language, mood shifts. You learn to manage people's emotions so that you can stay safe. And those things don't disappear when childhood ends. They follow you. They shape how you see yourself. They shape what you believe you deserve. When I was 13 years old, I got my first job delivering newspapers, riding my bike through the neighborhood at 5 a.m. so that 200 people could read their morning paper. And it wasn't for spending money, it was to help. I used the money I earned from that paper route to help buy school clothes for my family. Responsibility came early. Adulthood came early. By the time I was a teenager, I wasn't thinking about purpose or calling or leadership. I was thinking about stability, safety, about getting through, just surviving. So if you told a younger version of me, if you told that kid that one day I'd speak to people, that I would lead teams, that I would hold leadership roles, he would have probably poured himself a big glass of lukewarm powdered milk and laughed in your face, laughed hysterically, probably nervously as well. But sometimes you just have to keep going. So I decided to do something different. I showed up for college with $20 cash in my pocket and a $500 scholarship. That was it. No backup plan, no financial cushion, just hope and uncertainty. And somehow it wasn't easy, but by the grace of God, I made it through. I became the first person in my family to graduate from college. And then I went on to earn a master's degree. And honestly, that felt suspicious, because when you grow up in survival mode, progress, it seems temporary. It seems fragile. And that's when imposter syndrome really took root. The deep kind. The kind that whispers constantly, you don't belong here. This won't last. Eventually, they will find out. Eventually, everything will collapse. Most of my life, I've felt like I'm not supposed to be this guy, not supposed to succeed, not supposed to lead, not supposed to be trusted, definitely not supposed to be stable. About 10 years ago, I was in a high-level leadership role in a church, preaching regularly, leading the creative team, helping to shape the vision of the church. It was meaningful. It was powerful. It was fulfilling. But then everything started to change. Our lead pastor was diagnosed with a terminal illness. He wasn't just my pastor. He was my mentor. He was my leader, my friend. And over the next 3 years, we watched as this disease slowly took more and more from him. And as a leadership team, we had to lead while going through grief. We had to care for other people while watching someone we loved suffer. It was emotionally exhausting. It was extremely stressful. It was spiritually heavy. Eventually, he passed away. We lost a pastor. I lost a mentor, a friend. Grief kind of settled over everything. And just a few weeks later, I walked into the office and I was let go without notice, without any real reason. I came in one morning, expect to plan for the future and move past the grief. Instead, I left that day never to return again. It was a shocking change in my life and my career. So in just a few weeks, I lost my pastor, my mentor, my friend, my job, my church, and most of the relationships that were connected to that season. Everything that was stable was suddenly gone. Every fear I had ever carried came rushing back. This is it. You were never supposed to be here. Everything was temporary. Everything I had feared felt confirmed. And those things that haunted me had just become reality. That sent me into one of the darkest seasons of my life. Depression, loss of clarity, loss of direction, loss of all of my confidence. I felt untethered. I felt like I had no foundation. I wish I could say I handled that season with this deep spiritual composure. I did not. I handled it kind of about as well as a dog handles peanut butter on the roof of their mouth. A lot of effort, not much progress, and definitely not looking good while I was doing it. But even though that was a messy season, that's not the end of my story. It was friction, deep friction, grief-filled friction. It was identity-shaking friction. But friction is not destruction. Friction shapes things. Friction refines things. It strengthens things. God was working in me. He was using it to form me, to prepare me, to deepen me. That was one of the clearest moments in my life when friction felt overwhelming. But it became one of the places where God formed me the most deeply. And that's really at the heart of this podcast. It's what it's all about. Because friction is real. Pressure is real. Disappointment is real. Confusion is real. But friction is not the end of the story. Scripture speaks clearly to this in James chapter 1. We're told that trials produce perseverance, and perseverance makes us mature and complete. Faith doesn't just help us get through the friction. Faith uses the friction to grow us into someone stronger, steadier, deeper. So if you're in a season of friction right now, Scripture gives us a way to understand what's happening in the middle, inside that friction. Romans chapter 5, we're told, we glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. That passage shows us that God does not waste difficulty. He works through it. And it gives us three practical anchors that we can hold on to when life feels heavy. The first anchor is naming what is real without assuming it's permanent. Romans begins with a simple word, an honest word, suffering. Suffering, Scripture doesn't pretend it doesn't happen. It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't just rush past it. It names it. And we're invited to do the same. One of the most important spiritual practices in difficult times is honest naming, not exaggerating, not denying, just telling the truth. This is hard. This hurts. I feel overwhelmed. I don't understand what God is doing. But here's where faith shifts the perspective. We name suffering without declaring it final. We often confuse pain with permanent reality. We think this is how it will always be. This defines me. Nothing will change. But Scripture consistently reminds us seasons move. God works, sometimes slowly, but God works over time. Transformation takes time. So we name the trial we name what is real without assuming that it's permanent. The second anchor is staying faithful in the small steps. Romans tells us that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance is not dramatic. It's steady. It's ordinary. It's continuing when continuing is difficult. Most people think that growth happens in breakthrough moments, but almost all growth happens over time. Showing up one more time. Praying one more time. That real, honest prayer. Taking on a faithful step. Not fixing everything, not solving everything, just staying present with God and continuing forward. Faithfulness in the small steps, it doesn't feel impressive, but it is powerful, deeply powerful, because perseverance is what activates us over time. So stay faithful in the small steps. The third is to focus on formation, not the friction. Romans continues, perseverance produces character. That's where perspective changes, because friction always takes something: comfort, certainty, control, but it always forms something: strength you didn't have before, depth you didn't choose but you now carry, resilience that can't be taught any other way, empathy for others. God is not only working around your circumstances, he's working within you. And formation only happens when life feels strange and uncomfortable and difficult. This reminds me of something that happened when I was in middle school. I ran track, and our coach used to have this unusual illustration. He said, picture that you have a necklace on. Now put that necklace in your mouth and keep it tight. And at first it sounded ridiculous, but what he was saying was this: when you hold a necklace like that, it forces you to keep your head up. You can't look down at your feet. You can't stare at the track in front of you. Your position changes. Your breathing changes. Your stride changes. Everything about how you run changes. Why? Because you're being trained to run differently. You're being trained, turned into a runner who moves with strength and decision and endurance. Even when it feels awkward, even when it feels strange and you feel unsure, even when you don't understand what it means in the moment, it's still formation. That's what formation looks like. God doesn't just remove difficulty, he uses difficulty to shape how you live, how we respond, how we move forward. He lifts our perspective. He strengthens our endurance. He reshapes our posture, not just so that we survive the race, so that we become the kind of people who run it well. So instead of asking the question, why is this happening? We begin to ask questions like, what is being formed in me through this? And that question changes everything, because formation means purpose. And purpose means seasons that are not meaningless. Make a decision to focus on the formation, not the friction. If you're in friction right now, you're not broken. You're not abandoned. You're not finished. You are in formation. Faith is not just helping you endure this season. It's growing you through this season. And that growth always produces hope. If you had told that younger version of me, the kid searching through the couch cushions for change to buy a loaf of bread, that the kid who lived in survival mode and thought survival was the best that life could offer, that one day I would be here, that one day I would lead people, he would not have believed you. He would not have believed you, because when you grow up in situations like that, you're not supposed to end up here. But God had different plans. Jesus has a way of taking what looks like a mess and transforming it into something beautiful. Today, I've been married for 31 years. My wife and I live in a beautiful home that we've been in for 20 years. I can count 20 places that I lived before I turned 18. We have 3 amazing daughters, and they have not had to experience the things in life that I did. That alone feels like a miracle to me. And I have a job that I truly believe that God has perfectly shaped me for. A role where my past isn't wasted, where the friction didn't disqualify me, it prepared me. Now, let me be honest with you. Do I still struggle with imposter syndrome? Yeah. Sometimes I still hear those whispers. You don't belong here. This is not who you are. It's all going to fall apart. But now I know what to do with those voices. I don't run from it. I don't believe it. In faith, I walk through the friction. The way we do this is to name it without assuming it's permanent. Stay faithful in the small steps. And we focus on the formation, not the friction. Let me tell you, if God can take a life that began in survival and shape it into something meaningful, then he's not finished with your story either. So if life feels heavy right now, if you feel like you don't belong where you are, if you feel like you don't know if things will ever change, hear this. Please hear this. Friction is part of the process, not the conclusion. Your story is still unfolding, and faith can meet you right here in the middle of it. Thank you for listening to Faith in the Friction. If this has resonated with you and encouraged you, I would ask you to share it with someone else who might need the encouragement today. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.